Hello, welcome to History on Blast, episode 10, 8-foot vertical leap. On today's episode, we're going to be putting the actual devil on blast for being a jumpy boy and breathing fire into people's faces in Victorian London. But first, this month in history. On October 3rd, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued yet another of his many proclamations. Unlike most of them, this one wasn't about winning the Civil War or the emancipation of slaves. No, this one was about pumpkin pie and turkey. That's right, on October 3rd, Abraham Lincoln officially signed Thanksgiving into existence as a national holiday, giving us a day to reflect, give thanks for what we have, and watch football and the Macy's Parade. So, let's talk about my boy, Jack. And I don't mean Jack the Ripper. No, we're talking about the OG Jack. The original. The first Jack to terrorize the streets of London 50 years before Jack the Ripper showed up with a knife. We are talking today about Springheeled Jack. This is going to be the first of 3 of our Haunted History Halloween episodes. So I figured why not start strong and put the devil himself on blast. Starting in London in 1837, people started seeing a gentlemanly or devil-like being wearing a tight-fitting, possibly oilskin cloak and a helmet with clawed hands and maybe metal claws with burning red eyes that would breathe blue flames and could jump over a 10-foot wall from more or less standing still. And they dubbed this creature, man, devil, Springheeled Jack. Basically because he was a bouncy boy, and Jack is what they use as sort of a generic name for a guy in London. The first account we have comes from October of 1837, when a woman by the name of Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill, where she worked as a servant. She had been off visiting her parents in Battersea, which is another part of London, and she was passing through the Clapham Common when a strange figure jumped at her out of an alleyway, which is super mustache-twisting vaudeville villain, and I kind of love it, but also it must have been terrifying given the descriptions. And he then proceeded to hug her really tightly, to immobilize her more or less completely, kissed her face, tore her clothes, and then ran away when she started screaming. Which on the surface doesn't sound all that paranormal until she starts mentioning, yeah, and he had claws and also was the devil. Oh, and his hands were as cold and clammy as a corpse. Cool. Now this same being was seen multiple times. The very next day, in fact, is a report of what would become the iconic modus operandi of our friend Jack here. He would jump out of shadows at coachmen, and this would scare the horses because horses are scared of fucking everything. They just are. It's a fact of the universe. Horses are basically anxiety with 4 legs. So Springheeled Jack would jump at these horses out of nowhere, and it would scare them, and the coachman would lose control and crash, and in most cases was fairly severely injured. And in this case, they then watched Springheeled Jack jump over a 9-foot fence, babbling and laughing while running away. Like you do, because that's totally normal. Now, one of my favorite appearances of Springheeled Jack happens on April 14th of 1838. And this is when my boy Jack, I guess, gets bored with being a bipedal, gentlemanly humanoid devil and decides, you know what Sussex needs? Sussex needs a fucking bear. So a gardener on Rose Hill, Sussex, was working when he was suddenly accosted by a bear. Which, okay, yes, bears are real. Yep, good on that one. Bears, however, are not exactly what I would call native to England, especially not to Sussex. So unless there was like a breakout at the local zoo and they just didn't record it in history, we have an unaccounted for bear. And then, as always, the bear jumps over the garden wall. And we don't really know how tall that was, but given that, our boy Jack here has like an 8 to 10 foot vertical leap, and now he's a bear, it could really be anything. On the other side of the wall, Jack, no longer a bear, now deciding to be a bipedal human-y devil dude again, accosts two women in the alleyway behind the garden, where he scares them badly and breathes blue flames into the face of one woman, basically sending her into shock. Because, the last thing you expect when you encounter a perfectly normal-looking gentleman who's a bit tall and lanky and carrying a lantern is for him to get up in your face and breathe fire. After about here, Springheeled Jack starts to wander, and he goes further afield than London and Sussex, and we start getting reports from East Anglia, and Northamptonshire, and Devon, and Peckham, and kind of all over England, Wales, Scotland, and then we get the Aldershot appearance, which is a really fun one, because the 60th Rifles, a unit, a regiment of British regulars, were stationed there. And they start getting reports of sightings of my boy Jack. And they decided that the best way to combat this night terror is to put armed guards, give everybody bullets, and say, if you see this fucker, shoot him on sight. And one of the sentries did. And nothing came of it. He shot Springheeled Jack at close range because Jack had actually gotten right up in his face and slapped him. And he then, the guard then shoots him. And nothing happened. Now, some reports will say, maybe it was blanks, maybe he missed, but I'm sorry. If someone is close enough to slap you in the face and you're shooting at them, missing is really hard. That's just how physics works. So, there are a few more sightings of Springheeled Jack over the years, with the last reported sighting officially being in 1904. There were a series of reports in Liverpool. After that point, it's really uncertain what happened to Springheeled Jack, but, 1837 to 1904 is a pretty long run for whatever the fuck that was. So, what the fuck is a Springheeled Jack? Good question. Nobody knows. To this day, the legend stands as maybe it was a devil, maybe it was a fae, maybe it was a ghost, maybe it was a guy with some kind of device that let him jump that high. It could have been anything. The witness reports all describe a tall, lanky gentleman who looked perfectly human other than the glowing red eyes and the 8-foot vertical leap. I've even seen theories that say maybe Springheeled Jack was a time traveler bent on playing pranks using futuristic technology. Because honestly, at this point in time, we have tech that would let you manage an 8-foot vertical leap. You'd, just have like some springy boot things going on. But yeah, no, we have no idea. Honestly, England could have been being terrorized by the actual devil. We don't know. So, what do you think Springheeled Jack was? If you've got any ideas, you should share them with me on Twitter because I would love to know what you think. And that's going to be pretty much it for this episode. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I know it's a bit of a deviation from the norm, but expect 2 more like it with some other spooky topics for the rest of this month. As always, if you have any feedback you'd like to provide, you can share that with me on Twitter at historyonblast or by email at historyonblast@gmail.com. If you would like to leave a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. That is, as always, the best way for us to get new listeners, and feel free to share the podcast with a friend. If you know somebody who you think might be into bullshit history, send them our way. Once again, I'd like to thank Defy the Mall for the use of their song Keeper of Histories for the intro and outro of the program. And as always, thank you.